Okay, Chair, when you're ready. We're now live on YouTube. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie, again. Good afternoon and welcome to the Exmouth Beach Management Meeting on the 1st of March 2022. I am your Chair, Councillor Paul Miller. Based on the decision of Council, we will continue to hold virtual meetings until the 11th of May 2022. I would like to remind both members and the public attending or watching that this Council has delegated much of its decision-taking power to our senior officers. May I remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn any telephone devices off or to silent. In the event of a break in the internet connection, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of expected steering group members here present. And over to Democratic Services for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with you, please. Councillor Paul Miller.
Thanks. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Denise Bickley, I don't see. Councillor Ollie Davey.
Present, thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Eileen Ragg, please.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Stott from Exmouth Town Council.
Present.
Thank you, Pauline. Councillor Tim Dumper, also from Exmouth Town Council.
Also present.
Thank you. The Deputy Clerk from Exmouth Town Council, Chetna.
Present.
Thank you very much. Councillor Christine Channon from Devon County Council, please.
Present.
Thank you very much. Harriet Googe from the Environment Agency. Are you online with us, Harriet?
Present.
Lovely. Thank you, Harriet. Martin Davies is not with us by the looks of it. Max Underhill from the RNLI, please.
Yes, present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Morgan from Exmouth Watersports. Are you with us, John?
I'm present. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, John. And who else do we have? Max. I think that's it from the steering group members that we're expecting, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. And I'd also like to welcome our other attendees who have joined us to help provide information about their experiences of the Exmouth coastline. And Debbie, can you take us through any of the other participants so they can introduce themselves, please, as well?
Yep, of course, Chair. So let's just looking at the participant list, I'll start with Councillor Nick Hookway, who's also joining us.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to, let me just check, bear with me a second, Chair. Graham Forshaw, would you like to say hello and let us know what you're here with us for today? Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Graham Forshaw here. I'm the Harbour Master for the River Ex and the canal, and I work for Exeter City Council.
Thank you for that, Graham. Much appreciated. Ivor Jones, would you like to introduce yourself, please? Are you with us, Ivor?
Yes. Ivor Jones, Station Manager, National Coast Watch at Exmouth Station.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And I think apart from some of our other councillors, Chair, are you happy to leave it at that for now?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thanks for that, Debbie. That's
Great,
really helpful. So now all the introductions are complete. I just want to outline what today's meeting will cover. We'll start with some updates from our officers, but the main purpose of this meeting today is to hear from you on the various elements listed under item 6, which is a call for evidence, your experience of the beach area, both historically and more recently, will be extremely valuable information to feed into the production of the beach management plan. So I'm really looking forward to coming on to that later. For now, we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is a reminder of the aims and terms of reference of the group, which was discussed at the last meeting. So there's there's a paper attached to the agenda on that, and I just was going to say, unless anyone has any specific questions on these, as I say, they're on the agenda to note. We can move on to the updates from the officers. So unless I see an electronic hand, I conclude that everybody's happy with the terms of reference if they've been able to read them, and any future concerns can be raised via email. So I'm not seeing any hands, so I think we can move on to agenda item 3, which looking forward to the update on the RNLI. We have Max Underhill from the RNLI and Tom Buxton-Smith from our council are going to speak on this item. I don't know who wants to go first. Shall we think Max would be, from the RNLI, from his perspective, it'd be good to get him to give us an update on what's going on there.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Chair.
I was just going to add, I can probably share my screen, which will have some images to help.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.
Just bear with me. Sorry, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, lovely, Tom. Thank you.
So shall I go straight to the photos?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just touch on those, not on those notes. So you may be aware the works have been ever so slightly delayed on site. The coffer dam, which is installed at the approximate low tide height, it was slightly difficult to install on account of some of the weathering and conditions experienced there. A lot of the sands at that level of the beach are very saturated, but that was completed some time ago now, and the progress has accelerated quite rapidly until today, whereby the ramp extension is actually wholly complete. The remaining time on site, which runs to the 11th of March, effectively allows for the clear down and demobilisation. So, yeah, so thank you all for your patience there. So if you want to switch on to some photos for me.
Yep.
So what you're looking at here, it just goes to show our working together here. This is part of the Promenade Bastion. So this is approximately adjacent to the RLI's lifeboat station at Exmouth seafront. What you're looking at there is, to the far left is an existing concrete structure, and obviously with the wet concrete and the steel sheet piles there, you can see that is effectively underpinned. That was an area of concern we referenced previously because it was being undercut by erosion process. So that now is mass filled with concrete. And as you can see there, the sands have been moved around Exmouth Beach to allow access to that. And ultimately, once the works are complete, it will be reburied. Also in the back of the picture, you can see that was the delivery of the precast concrete units, which will hopefully make sense what they are in the next image. So here we are, we're actually looking down inside the coffer dam. So to the far right of your screens, that is effectively between 1.5 and 2 meters below the normal beach sand height at the bottom of the ramp for serving Exmouth Lifeboat Station. And what that is, that's the first row of precast concrete planks set. And that is now the new depth of the Lifeboat Station ramp. Once that work is complete, everything that you can see in that image up to about halfway through the photograph will actually be reburied, and under normal conditions would not be visible. But it just goes to show the sort of engineering style operation which you need when you're working in these coastal environments where scour is present. So Tom, if you can show the next photo.
Yep.
This is the latest photo as of this morning about 10 o'clock. So that is the last row of the pile capping surface beams which go in, and that where that gentleman's elbow is comfortably leaning, that is the new surface to which the lifeboat will access the beach sands. Roughly the approximate location of where that gentleman is stood, that will be the level that the sand will approximately be back at. Now we believe some sand will possibly refill beneath that space, obviously as the works demobilise, but effectively at this time of speaking with you now, all of those equivalent planks to the left of those 2 new ones installed are now installed. So the remaining work site is now based around demobilizing and extracting the cofferdam and replacing beach sands. So, you know, we've had to deal with quite a few storm events in January, and obviously the recent well-publicized events. But the sort of design intent of this piece of work was always that we knew where we were working in far below the tidal zone. Some of the challenge, and I think this will help the group going forward, is some of the lessons learned here is that, you know, that at high tide, particularly with any storm surge, the entirety of the beach is awash almost to the sea wall. It just posed a slight challenge for the construction teams here, but obviously that was formed as part of our brief. But it's on account of, you know, while we're still there at this date. But as we said before, the 11th of March is the exit date, and we're pleased to see that there's quite a lot of interest in the work, and obviously we've been on the national press and news highlighting the good news for Exmouth, and we'll be very pleased to see the station back into full operation shortly. So thank you for the opportunity to explain that to you, and if you've got any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Max, and thank you for well done for this work, and thanks for sharing that image hot off the press there. Thanks for sharing that. Tom, would you like to add anything to this?
Not really, other than obviously we're working really well together with the RNLI and yeah, getting up regular updates, and so thank you very much, Max. Yeah, it's good. It's good to see it getting, you know, soon the cofferdam will go and we'll see the slipway. So it's exciting. It
is exciting. Thanks very much. I'm going to call 2 speakers now who have their hands up. I'll start with Councillor Dumper from Exmouth Town Council. Tim.
Thank you very much, Paul. I just wanted to thank you, Max, by the way, for that comprehensive update, and thank you for the work that's been done. I just wanted to establish exactly what was meant by cofferdam. It was a term that was used several times and not really explained exactly. Thanks.
Yeah, apologies there. Yeah, a cofferdam. So Tom's just reverted back to photo number 2. The cofferdam is that effectively a in situ formed steel box, which is driven. So each of those individual piles there is an individual sheet which lock together through a clutch on each edge. And what that does is it forms a watertight box effectively. So you'll note at the location we are at Exmouth Lifeboat Station, the tide comes in, you know, far beyond the current toe of the existing ramp. So that enables a safe working space in those tidal conditions. At the depth we're working there, it varies between 1.5 2 meters below the normal beach level. It not only retains the beach sands, but it also keeps the water out. So it enables that safe working space.
Yeah, thanks, Max.
Thanks very much, Max. That's excellent. I'll move on now to Councillor Christine Channon from Devon County Council, who represents Exmouth and Litlam and Budley.
Thank you so much for these really interesting photographs, because they give us some idea of the really constructive engineering that's going into this particular scheme. How much does it cost, and who's actually paying for it? I think you might be also interested to know that our mutual friend, Mr. Cathro, complained to me that there was a camper van parked beside the site, obviously from one of the construction people. So I put him in his place.
Well, the works obviously aren't quite complete yet, so I won't want to comment on the commercial sensitivity of the price. But what I can tell you is it's funded by the RLI generously through donations. So this kind of capital estates expenditure is funded purely by donations and our ever supporting fundraisers, and especially those at the station at Exmouth. So, our thanks really it goes to the RNLI supporters and the station personnel who so dearly deserve this project. So,
Somebody, if I might just fleetingly come back,
of course,
make it clear to people that the RNLI have paid for this scheme. So that might encourage people to be a little bit more generous in their contributions to them.
Well, I entirely,
Thank you.
I entirely agree with your sentiment there, Councillor Challen. I hope your comments there will be recorded in the minutes, and perhaps we will look at we will look at emphasising the huge contribution made by the RLI. Now let's see, do we have any more? We do. We have Councillor Pauline Stott from Exmouth Town Council. Pauline. Are you there, Pauline?
You're on mute, Pauline. Could you unmute yourself?
Somebody's muted me. So I just wanted to know whether East Devon had put money towards this as well. Did they put any money towards it? Because a lot of work was done for East Devon.
Thanks, Pauline. Let's get the official position. Tom Buxton Smith. Could you come in and give us some information on, if you can?
Yes.
About that.
I'm not aware of any large contribution. We have contributed a very, very small amount. There was some, as you're probably aware, under the existing slipway, there was some aged and redundant timber structures, and they were posing sort of health and safety issues to members of the public when it was open, but also to the construction. So we've contributed a very small sum to get them removed, but I'm not aware, and I'm very happy to stand corrected, that East Devon have contributed any major funds towards this.
And if I may, just to confirm, the RLI is acutely aware that we're working ahead of the beach management plan here. So obviously we were acting purely on the basis that we want to reinstate our life-saving service as soon as possible. So we appreciate we're sort of going ahead of the own intent of this group, but it's for that life-saving need. So yeah, we're very pleased to be working with East Devon in partnership, and my thanks go out to Tom and other officers who have helped us and supported us to this stage.
Thank you.
Thanks, Max. I think you've just made a really, really important point, and I'm glad you've made it on the importance of why this has been done now, before the beach management plan. And I, for one, as chair, completely support that. So, if we don't have any more speakers on this item, I think we can move on now. And thank you very much, Max, for your report and all the work you've done. And we move on to the agenda item 4, which is going to be an update on the Xs3 Partnership. And that's going to be Tom Buxton Smith to update us on that. Again, I'll invite members to speak by raising their virtual hand at the end of the update. So, and you've got your slides ready now, Tom. So I'll hand over to you straight away. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was also going to suggest, prior to the meeting starting properly, I think it was Councillor Pauline Stott was asking about the Xs3 Partnership, and Councillor Christine Channon was explaining it, and I figured there might be a few more members of this group that would probably welcome a description of what the Xs3 Partnership is. I'm happy to give one, but I believe Councillor Christine would be better placed.
Why don't we mix things up? We don't usually do things this way, but I think you're absolutely right, Tom. It makes sense. Why don't we hand over first, if you're okay with that, Christine, to give this steering group, basic introduction of how the Xs3 Partnership works obviously in your role as the chair of it. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
I think it might be quite useful for your next meeting if you invited Steph, who leads on it for us now, to give a brief report to you, or just a sort of video presentation, because there are several very important matters to Exmouth and Exmouth Beach in terms of this, particularly to do with the work on Dulwich Warren, which has not been confirmed yet as to exactly what they are going to do. But also on the plan, it's apparent to me that And I'm a new girl on this situation. I'm the green girl, okay, you know. I may not even be the green girl after the end of May, if Jeff is keen to take it back. Although I must say I found it extremely interesting, very, very informative. So I will be keeping my eye very firmly on what goes on here. But we do seem to have, if you like, a class of tension between the environmental issues, the fishing, the shell fishing, particularly, you know, the bird life, etc., on the estuary, and also the use of tourism and leisure facilities. We also have problems to do with farming and the pollution and the southwest water, I have to say, and the pollution of the waters. So there are some really important issues that I've begun to understand. I think it'd be really helpful for the members of the beach team, Exmouth beach team, to be fully aware of, because it's been a real eye-opener for me from so many points of view. So, Tim, if you would be happy about that, if we have Steph Harper-Young just to give a very short presentation the next time you have a meeting, I think that'd be really helpful. I would also like to thank Exeter City, my Exeter Council as well, yes, East Devon District Council and Exmouth Town Council for the contributions they make to that. Because unfortunately, we have certainly one district council on the other side of the river who doesn't make what I think is a reasonable contribution from that point of view. And yet they have a lot of interest there. But I would like to say thank you to Exmouth and to East Devon for the contribution, along with Devon and Exeter, that they make. So Harbour, as you say, Exeter supports the Harbour Master, Graham, who does a brilliant job.
Thanks very much, Christine. And I think we'll be taking you up on that suggestion. Very good suggestion to have a brief report come to the next meeting. But in the meantime, Tom, if you could carry on with the update as it stands. Yeah. From your understanding, over to you.
I have just noticed Councillor Nick Hookway has raised his hand, so it might be relevant to.
I should bring you in, Nick. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo the comments made by Councillor Channon. I am the East Devon District Council representative for the Xs3 Management Partnership, of which I am very pleased to be. I think it is a really solid, excellent organisation that provides a link from grassroots right the way up to decision making at county level. It's run by an excellent officer, and
can you do? I'm in a virtual meeting, so can I ring you back? Okay. Bye.
It's run by an excellent officer, and we have had some extremely good meetings. The new management partnership agreement is well worth reading when it becomes distributed, or if you've got time to have a look at it, because it is a consultative document that took some time to bring together, and it is a very effective document. One of the things that Councillor Channon mentioned was the Environment Agency and this conflict between environment and various uses. In my view, part of the problem we have is the Environment Agency, which refuses to look at the estuary in its entirety. Their work at Dawlish Warren has been, I think, quite controversial and not entirely successful. And some of the views they now hold about flood risk and within the estuary are not entirely popular with some residents. But that is something that some of us have been working on for some time. But nevertheless, there is dialogue going on, and that is very useful. We had a very good discussion recently, the last meeting from the Environment Agency, talking about long-term issues on the estuary. But at the moment, they refuse to get involved with beach management because it doesn't meet their funding criteria. But I think that's a battle we need to keep fighting away with them. So as again, just to reiterate, absolutely support what Councillor Chan said. It is a very good organisation with an excellent officer. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Nick, and thanks for that insight from your position as a representative on the partnership. And we need joined up thinking. If I could, I don't see any other hands. So if I could move back to Tom Buxton Smith to give his perspective as an officer at East Devon District Council of where he sees the update from our perspective, and then we'll open up for 20 questions at the end, if that's okay. Tom?
Yep, absolutely. So first of all, I need to apologise. I wasn't able to actually attend the last meeting. I dared take some annual leave, which coincided with the meeting. So I've spoken to people that have attended it. It was more in relation to some possible hearsay that came out of it, and it worried me until I've checked it. And essentially, it's down to the longevity of Dawlish Warren is perhaps not what was originally thought, and this was construed as it was going to be breached very soon, and that is certainly not the case. So it's not particularly big news, but that was the news that made it to me, and obviously worried me initially, having not attended the meeting. So I've had a good look. First of all, my input focuses more on Dawlish Warren and its effect on Exmouth. So appreciate the Xs3 Partnership covers all things. I've just concentrated this on things I believe relevant to the Exmouth BMP. So, and again, I was not at the meeting, and I've only been able to pick up what I have from slides. So, and a few conversations. So at the moment, regarding Dawlish Warren, everything is fairly status quo. So there's no real big changes proposed, and there at least recently hasn't been big changes happening. There's no major works planned. There are some minor works planned, renewing some of the geotubes, but also potentially removing some of the groins towards the Exmouth end. So these are the ones which are largely buried and damaged and have little effect other than being a health and safety hazard. So they may get removed at some point. As has been alluded to, there's a new document coming out soon, and I believe it will be publicly accessible in April. I've just noticed Councillor Christine Shannon's hand's gone up, so I'll
yeah, if you want to do it that way, Tom, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Christine, do you want to come in if you've got a question, especially on what's just been said?
Well, not questions, just a comment, actually, which with respect now. I was disappointed that we couldn't come to something more conclusive about the Dawlish Warren situation at the last meeting. You know, we will forgive Tom for not being there, I'm sure, from that point of view. But I just think at the moment it seems to be rather too complicated to make a clear decision, and that worries me a little bit. You know, I'm not sure whether it's to do with cost and what have you, but I really do see that it's very, very important to the whole state of Exmouth Beach that we are, you know, in very close cooperation with what is going on there, because I'm sure the tide that down there is really important. Now, I know that the harbour master is concerned about some silting up of the estuary in various places and what we might do in terms of that. But you know, that tidal flow down there and the wind change and all the rest of it, and the way the beach is off, change from so many points of view, is really very, very important to how we proceed. Now, on Sunday, I think it was, I live in Buddy Salterton, and I was on church duty about 7:30 as I drove down. I saw it was the easterly wind, which completely changes the structure of the beach over that period of time. So if it will do that to a pebble beach like Buddy Salterton, what will it do to a sandy beach like Exmouth from that point of view? In addition to which, after the heavy tides last week and the winds, I went down to see what had happened now along Exmouth seafront. And I'll be asking later on how effective the flood defence was in terms of that from that point of view, because I simply don't know. It's all been cleaned up and what have you by the time I got down there. But no, we do have some serious tidal flows on that estuary now, and I'm no expert in terms of that. No, but we do need to get some expertise in, because otherwise, no, Exmouth is affected by this. On the day that I went down there, I was quite surprised as I drove along, you know, to the turn point at Orcombe Point. see, there's some there is some what do you call them? Wooden post. What do you call the wooden post down to the sea? No, hardly visible actually. So I can think clearly a lot more sand must have appeared there in a short period of time. So we do have some serious problems, and there is considerable erosion on Dawlish Warren. So no, as we say, time and tide wait for no man. So there we go.
They're groins, Christine.
Yeah, groins. I was going to say. I didn't want to...
Thank you, Ollie.
Yeah, and
I'm guessing.
When we had groins along there, they fell into disrepair at the western end, and we lost an awful lot of beach there, and they rock armoured it. And as we all know, the sand scours out from underneath the rock armour. I really don't like it. And if you look at the old photos of that part of the beach to the west of Manhead Slipway, there was quite a bit of beach there where the fishermen used to park their boats.
Thanks, Eileen. I had a question on the subject of groins, actually, which is on this fifth bullet point on the slides we see in front of us, which was may seek to remove redundant groins at Exmouth End.
No.
Tom, I don't know whether...
That's at Dawlish Warren.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just confused by the may seek. Is there some uncertainty about the way forward there from the partnership's perspective? I know you weren't at the meeting, but
yes, I probably can't comment on that because I don't know. Is the honest answer.
All right then. Okay then. So, shall we go back to you, Tom, to finish your presentation, and then any further questions?
Chairman, I'm sorry, I've got my hand up again, I'm afraid. So
that's okay.
Please don't remove the groins on Exmouth Beach.
No.
Else you'll have what happened on Sidmouth Beach.
That's okay. That's noted there. So Tom, I'll let you back in now to carry on.
Yep, absolutely. So yes, so I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they are the. Well, actually, it's confirmed in the next slide regarding where the groins are. So the next slide, which should appear shortly, I believe featured in the last Xs3 partnership meeting. This is from the Environment Agency. So it's a flood and coastal and erosion risk management focused what they would like to see or what they think. So it's not a balanced view. It's not taking into account tourism, ex-users, or indeed the environment. This is purely from a flood risk perspective. So, as Councillor Christine Channon mentioned, there are quite a few, there's a whole host of issues. It's very complicated. So I understand that they felt that this was a good way to basically put the flood risk points across and explain them. So I believe this runs from west to east, and it's essentially saying that there's not much planned apart from minor repairs and removing of the geotubes as per the assent that was given with their allowing them to go in. So I won't go into the details because I don't know them, but they're on here, and obviously the bottom one, which is the distal section, which is towards Exmouth Town End, is a second dashed point. There is potential to remove relic groins 16 to 18 because they have no flood and coastal risk and erosion risk management function. So those are the ones that there is a potential, but again, I'm not privy to is it a confirmed, or is it? I imagine it's still very much up for debate. So that's the general sort of how the Environment Agency see the Dawlish Warren being managed into the future, and I do need to stress that that's just one view amongst the Xs3 Partnership. So again, hopefully in the report, which should be more publicly accessible in April, it will become there'll be more balanced views to read on the Xs3. So that's my last slide on the Xs3 partnership, and if not, I'll move. If I don't have any questions or comments, I'll move on to the next. Okay, I'm moving on. So
you're on mute, Chair.
Sorry, just before we move on, sorry, I was just on mute there. I just wanted to say thanks very much, Tom. I understand the predicament you're in with that report, having not been able to go to that meeting. I think it would be really good to have a report in April on this, and perhaps the members of the steering group can get more of a handle on what's going on within the Xs3 partnership. I personally wasn't invited to the meeting as a guest and wasn't made aware of it, but I will be intending to find out a lot more between now and then. So thanks for your report, and yes, straight on to agenda item 5. Sorry for being on mute there, Tom.
That's Tim.
Okay, so moving on to point number 5, which is update on BMP progress. So so I have noticed Chair, Councillor Tim Dumpers raised his hand.
Tim, would it be on the item coming up?
No. What I was doing, Chair, was drawing people's attention to the fact that Harriet Googe from the Environment Agency had her hand raised during the discussion. I think she may have something to add to what was said.
Sorry for not seeing that. Harriet, please accept my apologies. Do you want to speak on the previous item there?
Yeah, sorry, it was all right. I think Tom actually covered it later on when he got to this slide, but it was just to talk about the relic groin removal. Is that basically they don't provide any kind of sand holding function at the end of it. They're a bit of a health and safety risk, and the pressure is coming from Natural England to help restore the whole site to a more kind of naturally functioning state. Obviously, the idea at Dawlish Warren is that we wouldn't have any groins at all. That's kind of the end point in a long-term goal. And so these ones that are proving not to have a kind of a function at all, and they're just a bit of a safety risk, is the idea that these ones would be removed at this point. Obviously, Dawlish Warren is a very dynamic site, so that's why everything is being done in very slow increments, because since the scheme, we've seen a lot of change on site, as I'm sure you're well aware. And so everything that is being suggested at the moment, and is out for consultation, is in very small trial kind of increments, rather than doing anything extreme or anything quick. So yeah, those were kind of what I wanted to say. I've seen a couple of hands have come up since.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I'll go straight to those hands. Councillor Eileen Wragg.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I strongly disagree with that comment that they don't hold sand. Local knowledge, both from fishermen and from sailors, say that since the groins have fallen into disrepair, the sand has gone. And the other thing, what you do to one side of the X is going to affect the other. And they put loads of groins over at Dawlish Warren, and the sand levels have built up. So I think there's no substitute, no disrespect, but what Harriet said, there's no substitute for local knowledge. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Eileen. I know it's Graham Forshaw, the Harbour Master's put his hand up. I'd like to take Graham next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity. I just want to amplify the frustration that people feel with the way that the changes have become apparent over recent times. Everybody knows that the X is a dynamic site, particularly at the Exmouth and Dawlish ends. However, the changes that have happened have had a huge effect on the channel that I'm concerned with, that goes up to Retreat. And the way that it is silting up. We're on the water this morning, and it is evident from number 14 buoy all the way up past 16 to 21, that part of the estuary is a lot shallower than it used to be in fairly recent times. And most people are frustrated. What I'm hearing on the ground is the frustration felt by people that their views were not taken into account. This local knowledge and this local history thing that lots of people have in this area A lot of that knowledge wasn't taken into account when the scheme was first thought of and put together. And that is disappointing, because a lot of people are saying, I told you so. That's all I have to say, Chair. Thank you.
And thanks, Graham. That was really, really helpful. Pauline Stott, you have your hand.
Thank you. I totally agree with what Eileen says. If the groins are going to be moved from Dawlish, oh, hurrah, because then we'll get our sand back. Most of it seems to have gone down the Ex and destroyed the mussel beds. It's destroyed the fishing down there. The water is about 30% shallower. I mean, they've done so much damage in what they did at Dawlish to Exmouth, and they never really consulted Exmouth to the point, you know, listening to people. And I think that's disgusting, because we're suffering from it. And I mean, there's, what was it, £40 million, and it only lasted a few months, not even a couple of years. It just exasperated. I know how locals must feel about it, but it really is disgusting. Even the birds now down the estuary aren't even coming, because they got nothing to eat, because it's all covered with sand. All the mud flats are, where all the sand's gone down the estuary. You know, really bad. That's all I've got to say on it, but I expect Eileen will come back.
Yeah, I'll let Eileen back one more time. But before I do, I'll just say, but at the end, I will give Harriet from the I will give the Environment Agency the opportunity to come back. I'll take you, Eileen, again, and then we'll go to Nick, and then go back to the Environment Agency. Okay. So, Eileen.
Thanks, Chair. There was a public exhibition at Dawlish, which I attended some years ago. There were feedback forms there, and I expressed strong doubts about the success of the proposed works, which were going to be carried out at Dawlish Warren, because I was sure that they were set to fail. And I don't like to say I told you so. I think it was a ridiculous waste of money. I thought it was about 12 million. But anyway, whatever it is, it's something that none of us have, I would guess. And you wouldn't treat your own money in that way, but I suppose it's okay for public money. And the whole scheme failed in a very short space of time. And Pauline's right. They didn't consult with the people of Exmouth. Yes, they had an exhibition over there, but really, I don't remember, and apologies if they did have one here and I've forgotten. I think there was something down in Ocean, but whether it was Dawlish scheme, I don't know. But really, again, coming back to what Graham said, it's local knowledge, and people who've watched the movements, the sound movements, constantly changing, constantly, we know that. But really, people who've watched the beach movements, the sound movements over decades, they should be listened to, because they're in touch with it on a daily basis sometimes. And they really should be listened to. And I think it's appalling that, you know, we got people who aren't familiar with the area coming in and telling us what we're going to have. Makes me very cross. I'm glad I took my blood pressure pills this morning.
So am I. Thanks, Eileen. So, Councillor Hookway, Nick, back to you.
Yes, firstly, wishing calming thoughts to Councillor Ragg. Yes, I'm going to come back to the point I raised earlier on. I would particularly refer back to what Graham Forshaw said about how the estuary is changing and how it is a dynamic estuary. And my point I'm going to reiterate is that the estuary should be looked at in its whole, as an entirety, by the Environment Agency. You can't put it, you can't just segment it off and expect work in one area is going to succeed and not have an impact elsewhere. And I hope perhaps through you, Chair, if we could perhaps contact the Environment Agency formally with a letter to say, look, this is the wish of the Exmouth Beach Management program that the Environment Agency looks at the S3, the Xs3 in its entirety, because it is dynamic and it is constantly change. And you can't make a change in one area without having an impact elsewhere. So I'd like to make that as a recommendation, please, that we do write to the Environment Agency and express our concerns and our wish that they would view the estuary as a single dynamic feature. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Now, on Debbie, my understanding is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm new to chairing these meetings, that recommendations can only be made by voting members of the group. And I'm wondering as well, as a steering group, are we in the habit of making formal recommendations? Can the steering group just get together and write a letter, basically in consultation with others? Debbie, can you give me some advice on that? That'd be really helpful.
Okay, Chair. So the steering group is brought together to inform as much as possible the creation of the beach management plan, obviously in a new form than the previous version. So I would say that what Councillor Hookway has raised falls outside of that remit, but there is no harm if the group feel passionate enough to put it in writing, as Councillor Hookway has suggested, or whether he, as portfolio holder, of course, is within his own right, can put that forward. But also bear in mind, please, that the Environment Agency are part of this group. It's partnership working environment. And therefore, the main job that the group is here to do is to inform that beach management plan. I understand the passions raised entirely, but this is a partnership working, and I guess it's just down to the phraseology perhaps that's used. But I'll leave that with you, Chair. That's up to the group.
Well, I'll allow.
Isn't the primary purpose.
Absolutely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let. Thanks so much for that advice, Debbie. That was really, really helpful for me. I'm going to go to Councillor Chapman because she's not spoken yet. She's an Exmouth Town Council, East Devon District Councillor, outside the steering group voting members, but I think it'd be good to hear from her. And then we'll go back to Eileen, who might have a recommendation, which I'm very happy to hear, and to see whether that's the will of the voting members. So first over to Maddie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going on the pollution risk, which is worrying me, which obviously affects the beach. I've had lots of complaints recently about the Mare Valley, and they've had sewerage going down the road and everything there. And there's also been a breach on the tanks on the Mare. Now we've got the overflow pipes that go through the beach and then go out. If it gets silted up further out because the sand is moving, I am now worried about the sewerage problem in the whole area there coming out onto the beach as well. Bearing in mind that at East Devon, we are having meetings or trying to get meetings with South West Water. Can we have an update from the Environment Agency on the problems on the beach and what we should be asking South West Water? I mean, should they put in more tanks? Bearing in mind there is planning development put forward for part of the Mare Valley sites, which will obviously increase sewerage. If it's not working at the moment, we need to know beforehand before that affects the beach. So if we could get a bit of clarity or ask the Environmental Agency to find out for us, Chair, I think that would be a good idea before we have a major incident.
Thanks, Maddie. And as you might know, we have a date now for South West Water coming to the scrutiny committee, which is obviously away from this steering group. And I don't want to drift too far away from what we're discussing today. What I'm going to do, Eileen, I'll bring you back in one more time, and then I really must go to our colleagues at the Environment Agency if they'd like to comment and speak as partners. But I'll go to you, Eileen, first.
Thanks, Chair. Who does this committee report back to? Is it Cabinet?
Cabinet, yeah.
Well, then, if we report back to Cabinet, we could recommend to Cabinet that a letter goes from the council.
That's an onward recommendation this steering group could make.
Yeah.
Debbie, I think that's for the steering group to decide through a vote. So if that's a proposal, Eileen, you'll need a second. You'll need a seconder. I'm not going to second it because I'm
proposing that then.
Okay.
Chair, if I may.
Yep, Debbie.
So Cabinet have obviously set the task for this group to help inform the beach management plan, and they've agreed for a sum of money to go forward to fund that. I would say it's not within your purview to then ask Cabinet to then write such a letter to the Environment Agency. I would advise, Chair, that if the group are so minded to do so, again, I would say with some assistance from our officers involved as well, bearing in mind this partnership working, that it's just a letter that perhaps, Chair, you're happy to send on behalf of the group to the Environment Agency covering your concerns.
Yeah.
But the Cabinet are a decision-making body, and it's, I would have said it's quite within their remit to put it to council for a letter to go from the council. What's wrong with that?
Eileen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I understand your concerns, and I could just send a letter myself without a recommendation, pretty much. The leader of the council could, if he wanted, I think, bring an item straight to Cabinet on this issue, if he wanted to discuss at the next meeting. I don't want to be caught out here with any constitutional issues, because I'm not sure, and I'm going to go with the advice of Debbie, which is an experienced democratic services officer. And what I will...
I've only been a councillor for 22 years.
No, I know, but I think there are other ways of raising what you'd like, and I'm going to go with the advice of the officer. And I want to bring in our Environment Agency colleagues if they're willing to respond to some of the concerns raised. Now they don't have to, but Harriet, if you'd like to come back in, you're very welcome. Then we're going to move on.
Yeah, hello. Thank you all very much for raising your concerns. I think it's great that we have conversation with this group and are able to kind of capture that. I've noted down what I've heard, but I will also welcome your letter to kind of make sure that we can give you a comprehensive reply. I just wanted to note a couple of things, but I'll keep it brief so that we can keep progressing with the Exmouth BMP kind of meeting stuff. And just to say that obviously the Dawlish Roaring scheme came out of the Xs3 study. So that was a kind of a consideration of the whole Xs3, and so this was one of the projects within that, which is publicly available if anyone wants to have a read of that, and I'm happy to share that. And as part of this work that has been done as kind of reviewing the Dawlish Roaring scheme, there has been thought process going into how that applies and how that updates the Xs3 strategy as well. So throughout both sets of process and what we're doing now, we are looking at the full estuary. Local knowledge. I completely agree with you guys. You guys have that local knowledge, and the community has that local knowledge, so we always welcome that. And with the work that is being proposed, might potentially happen over the next few years or so, we look forward to feedback from you all and from the public. With the pollution incident side, that's not something that I directly deal with. I work in flood and coast and not pollution, but I can inquire with the relevant teams about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I look forward to any kind of written questions and any kind of written concerns, so that we can really give you a thorough answer to these complex issues.
Well, thanks so much, Harriet. That's a really positive response for us. And I think it's the right way to go, actually. An onward recommendation to Cabinet would take time. I like the idea that Eileen, myself, and the other members of this steering group could get together and either get all the questions we want in one question, or we can have some open dialogue with you. Thank you so much for everybody's contributions to that item. It was emotionally charged for good reason. and we're going to move on now to agenda item 5, which is going to be Tom Buxton Smith's update to us on the beach management plan and the progress on it. So I'll hand over to Tom, please. And if we could ask questions at the end, please, I think on this item, I think that would be much more structured. So I think that would work better. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you. I think I've only got 2 slides, so I'll take questions at the end. So firstly, I think we last met in November. Might have been before that, and so we have been working on the beach management plan. What we're trying to do is get a scope together, or start the basis of a scope so that we can consult with the group on the scope. And this is slightly different from the scope regarding the aims and terms of reference. This is a contractual scope to find out what we want the consultant to actually do. So we have appointed BCP Council. So this is Bournemouth Christchurch Pool Council. So they formed a hub of highly qualified engineers and other qualifications who are well experienced in developing beach management plans. And they, through an agreement, we can tap into their resource at a much more flexible and competitive rate than perhaps going out to tender for this small amount of work. So it works perfectly, so we can be a bit more reactive and have more resource when we need it to get something moving. So we've appointed them to start on that, and unfortunately they couldn't make it to this meeting today, but this meeting is recorded, and they will certainly be listening to things we've said, but certainly the next section, which are really keen to get the local knowledge recorded and put into the development of the scope for the BMP. The other good news, the funding was approved to carry out the BMP study. So this means we've actually got some funds to put towards a consultant to go forward. And that having already spoken to BCP about this, we've got indications that the beach management plan document may not need to be as extensive as first thought. So originally we were looking at completely starting from scratch and having modelling, etc. Whereas given the modelling already exists and tested a few ideas, including new groins, etc., it's felt that we can just update this with new and recent local knowledge rather than start again from scratch. It's also relative to the overall funding of what we can achieve. For example, there's no point spending £100,000 on a report if we've only got £300,000 to do something physical with it. So it's being relative to where we are and the current funding situation. Because the scope of the study is likely to not include modelling, etc., it's going to be quicker to produce, which means we'll get a result sooner, but also means that there'll be more money available, as I alluded to actually do things on the beach, should we want to. So the other thing we've discussed at length, we've got to be realistic with the likely ongoing funding envelope. So unlike our other beach management schemes such as Exmouth, the beach there is directly connected to protecting hundreds of property, hence why it's well funded, and it's got a few £1 million behind it from central government. Exmouth Beach doesn't have that luxury. It doesn't really protect any homes. It does have some infrastructure it protects, and there is some money available from central government, but it's nowhere near the levels of the other BMP. So we wanted to come up with 2 options. Firstly, a most likely option, this is affordable. So within the likely funding envelope, which will come out of the scope study, I'm anticipating it to be no more than £500,000. So this will be money locally raised by councils and any other body, and potentially some from central government, but certainly no more than that. We need an option that's deliverable, so that's what we're going to work on. But on the other hand, would want to include a best case option. So we've already had it with other schemes that the government occasionally finds pots of money, funds almost from nowhere to do something. So it's being ready to grab that fund if and when it becomes available. For example, a year ago, sort of post lockdown one, there was a scheme that if you had shovel-ready schemes that needed a bit more money, you could have applied. So that may or may not come around again, but I think it would be good to be in a good position to say, well, we have these aspirations and these potentially could be delivered if we had a significant funding uplift, but in reality we've got this most likely scenario. So that's the end of my progress session. So if anyone wants to ask any questions before I go to the final and probably the most important element to this meeting.
Okay, thanks very much, Tom. We have a question from Strategic Lead for this area, John Golding, Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Tom, I was just wondering, in view of the discussion that we've just had, in terms of the kind of interdependency of Dawlish Warren and Exmouth, whether we should or how we do build into the scope of the brief for the consultant, and whether we can afford to recognise that the kind of dynamics between the two, because from all the information that we're getting, and I seem to recall two schemes were linked many years ago, not wanting to miss that kind of key dependency between the two areas, if you like, by limiting our scope of the consultant's brief. Have you got any immediate thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, as you mentioned, the previous BMP for a time was linked with Dawlish Warren. So this is a 2015 BMP. Originally, it was looking at both Dawlish Warren and Exmouth, but then it was separated. I think largely due to the different, although coastal processes might be similar, the funding, for example, Dawlish Warren protects many, I don't know, maybe 1,000, certainly hundreds of homes up the Xs3 from storm surges, whereas Exmouth Beach doesn't have that purpose. But appreciate they are linked. You know, sand moves east and west. Linking it in, we did talk about the study area being larger than the BMP sort of physical area, if you will, and I think that's in the terms of references. So the kind of the study area for the physical area for the BMP runs from Smeaton Wall to Orkham Point, and it's split up into 3 sections, and it's in the 2015 report. However, the study area should be bigger to include Dawlish Warren and the estuary, but we do run the risk of creating a behemoth of a challenge that we can't move, we can't go anywhere. We need to do some progress that's realistic, and the Xs3 Partnership is looking after all things within the Estuary. I think it's possibly working well with them, and also looking, making sure Dawlish Warren, what thoughts are happening to Dawlish Warren in the future. If we have our scope too much focused on things that we can't control, I mean, we can influence Estuary and Dawlish Warren, but we have less control on it as part of this group. We do just run risk going to scope creep and really not achieving anything. And again, I think one of the aims was that this is an urgent project and to try and reduce the sand loss that we have. So I think we need to include it, but not get dragged into the nth degree of making sure it's being looked at again and again. The consultant will pick up the reports produced by the Xs3 Partnership and any of the Dawlish Warren work and feed it in, but it's not going to be a wholesale look again, because also we don't have the funding, as is probably the other side of the coin. So.
Thanks, Tom. John, do you want to come back at all on anything from that question? You can if you like, or not. move on.
Well, I think it's helpful, Chair, that I think Tom captured it at the end. I do recognise it's almost an impossible question to answer, and perhaps I shouldn't have posed it in the meeting, but outside the meeting. But I think Tom's explanation in the end that we do need to just make sure our consultants are alert to the changes and the work that's going on, and try and ensure that they have regard to that when they're coming up with the findings for Exmouth. And I do recognise that there is huge danger in the scope creeping into something we'll never be able to afford or complete. So yeah, appreciate your answer. Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and thanks, John. I actually think there would have been other members that, and certainly myself, that had the same thoughts. I'm glad you articulate that, John. And I think the interdependent relationship is obvious. So further discussion on that another time outside this meeting would be great amongst the steering group members. I'll now move on to Ollie Davey, Councillor Davey. Hi, Ollie.
Thanks, Chair. Hi. Yeah, I think it's a very good idea to have the two options, the affordable and the best case. I just wondered if part of the remit for the consultants will be that the one should be capable of being nested within the other. What I mean is we don't want to go for the affordable option, put it in, then find that we have the money for the best case option, which involves ripping out everything we've done for the affordable option. So we don't want to kind of undo £500,000 worth of work because we've now got the funding to do the best case. So I'm just really asking, will the two be capable of being nested within each other, so that it would be a kind of extension option that would be the best case?
Absolutely. Yeah, a complementary scheme of each other rather than that by all means that will certainly go into the scope when I discuss it more with BCP, because yes, you're right, it'll be a waste of public funds to rip out something to build something bigger.
Okay, let's have a look. Is there any other questions? I don't see any more hands going. Okay, so I think we can move swiftly on now. To agenda item 6, which is the big item that you're going to present, Tom, and please go ahead. Looking forward to this one. Okay,
so this is what we're really keen to get, is essentially real first-hand experience from local eyes and in Exmouth. I have tried to create some order to this, that there are several sections split up in terms of changes to the navigational channel, changes to pole sands, changes to various sections of the beach, and then any other changes. So I wanted to try and keep it to the subject as we're going forward before we move on to the next one. I do appreciate they are all linked, but if we can try and target anyone speaking or giving evidence to each point as we go through, that'd be really helpful for us, because we are recording this, and with the consultants we'll go back through it. So having it in an order is easier. So I'll start with changes to the navigation channel. So I was kindly contacted by Andrew Hinton, I believe. Sorry, my Skype's covering my notes. Yeah, Andrew Hinton from the National Coastwatch Institution. Obviously, they are based on the beach and see the changes daily. So he's provided me with a couple of images and some text. So again, I'm not an expert at this, so I'm I'm trying to give this information out. Andrew couldn't be here today, so however, if either wants to interject if I say something incorrect or I've got the wrong end of the stick, please do. But Andrew's written some notes on me, so I'm going to try and give them to you. So essentially, this was a survey done in March 2021, which I understand is the last one. And blue data, the blue darker colours are deeper water, and the red being the area which dries at high tide. So this is kind of a good idea of what's out there regarding the navigation channel. And Andrew's put down some thoughts on the next page. So it's his understanding that there's been a general migration of pole sands in an easterly direction over the last few years. The next section, LiDAR suggests pole sands actually moving in a southerly direction. So perhaps, and it'd be a good discussion point whether or not it's moving, southerly, it's moving in a north direction, but whether or not it's a north direction, an east direction, or maybe a northern easterly direction, I think it'd be good to discuss. But I just didn't want to confuse matters when I show a slide showing a different arrow. So the areas that are dry are green on the chart, and essentially are beginning to encroach more on the navigational channel, which is the orange arrow. And I understand that the sands have encroached so much that the harbour master has recently had to move several buoys in the area eastwards to deeper water. There's also this is kind of a new change, but going back in time in historical records, it appears although the navigation channel appears to be moving to where the red arrow is from the orange, this possibly is a historical channel. So actually going back to the early 2000s, the channel was more where the red arrow is. And that's how I seem to remember it as well. The last time I sailed out, when I was probably 15, was out to was along the shore rather than outwards. So Andrew suggested perhaps this is a cyclic event that is part of the bigger picture, that the navigational channel had changed, and now it's changing back, and it will probably change again. I think that's the end of what of the points he was trying to make. I appreciate I've been slightly rambling about them, so I'd welcome probably Ivor is probably the best person to make any comments, but I appreciate any other comments, especially the harbour master, who I believe's on here, Graham, as well. So please make some comments, and we'll listen intently. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. And Graham Forshaw, Harbour Master, you have your hand up, so straight over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Tom. You're absolutely right. The survey was done March last year. We're going to have another one done in April of this year. But the trend that you see there, that is certainly true, that the sand is moving further east. There is a little bit of north in it, and there's a little bit of south in it as well. But that's just the way that sand is moving around. It does have an impact, this movement of sand, because if we have to move the buoys, it's a pretty big deal. It's expensive, and we've got to get sometimes an outside contractor to come and help us with that. And it's also has an impact on our port limits. If you look at the legislation covering the Port of Exeter, the port limits are from Langston Point on the west side there, through the East Ex buoy and on to Strait Point. But the position of the East Ex buoy, and you can see that the yellow arrow is pointing to the East Ex buoy, it used to be over to the right, at the end of where the red arrow is. And so when the channel moved a couple of years ago, it was moved to its current position now. Now that does have a bearing from a legal point of view on where our port limits are. So that's something that we are concerned with in Exeter City Council. And in fact, we're about to go through this harbour revision order to establish clearly where the port limits are. And it may be that we'll have to build in that movable feast of moving the East Ex buoy east or west according to the movement of sand. But it does show there, if you look on the yellow arrow coming down the page, you can see number 4 and number 6 buoy, and those two buoys have had the most movement in. We've moved those 3 or 4 times in the past year, and on the other side of the channel, number 5 and number 3, we've moved those also. And it is, what is particularly interesting where number 3 and number 5 are, they're actually sat on a shelf of rock, And so the sand is accelerating across that shelf of rock and building up just to the north of where that red arrow is. And what is also, as I was mentioned earlier on, the silting up of the channel and the approaches. By number 4 and number 6 now at low water springs, you can get out and walk between those buoys. So it is particularly shallow. And if you, from a navigation point of view, when people are ringing up and looking to come and visit us in the summer months, we're now saying that you don't attempt, if you're not familiar with the entrance to the X, don't try and enter 2.5 hours before low water, because potentially it's a hazard. The sand moves around up the channel, and locals get to know it, and fishermen get to know it particularly, and can alter course accordingly. But if you're not sure of where the channel is, and you're just relying on those navigation buoys, and we haven't had chance to move them according to the shifting sands, then potentially it's a hazard, a real hazard.
Thanks very much, Graham. At this point, it feels appropriate to bring in Ivor Jones from the National Coast Watch Institute, who's kindly come today. Ivor, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's good to see you all. I just thought I'd just remind everybody of Andrew's pedigree, if you will. He is a senior manager in the UK Hydrographic Office, with responsibility for the South Coast and the south of England. So the comments and observations and data that he produces are extremely well informed. Although the information passed here is on a personal level, it is of course directly taken from data that he is privy to. So it is information that you would probably be unlikely to get from any other source. What I would like to suggest, and if it's helpful, is that if any of the people here think it of value, they're very welcome to come into our lookout at various stages of the tide to get a visual view of the state of the sands. And of course that varies depending on the state of the tide. I mean, the LAT that we had a couple of years ago, whatever it was absolutely remarkable with an aerial shot that we had. And as Graham alluded to earlier, you could virtually walk across from Dawlish Warren to the beach at Exmouth. But we witness remarkable changes have witnessed in a very short time, changes that have shifted the navigable channel. We see the different routes vessels have to take entering and leaving the channel. We are aware with conversations with vessels of their increasing concern. Inclement weather and certain weather conditions have moved buoys, and this has happened quite frequently, and Graham and his team are desperately trying to get them back onto station, and even mindful of the fact that if they put them back onto station, that may not be an appropriate position. So they're constantly reviewing and rejigging these locations and then posting as a notice to mariners a new position. It just happens all of the time. But anyway, basically what I was going to say is just reiterate that invitation to any of you that would like to visit the tower and observe visually what is actually happening in the estuary at the various tide stages. That was it.
Thanks, Ivor. I'll certainly be taking you up. I've visited the tower already, but I'll be visiting again to be able to make those observations myself. Thanks very much.
It may be useful. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been looking forward to meeting. You mentioned Andrew there. He can't be here today, but look forward to working with him. So I don't see any other hands. Ivor, unless you want to come back, I can't see anybody. So Tom, I'm thinking we move on to issue B, which is changes in pole sands.
Yes, thank you. And again, thank you to both of you for your input, and thank you for Andrew. And I was again supposed to mention, I've written it on the slides, that they were Andrew's personal views and not the official view of any organisation. So, but I will speak to him. I'm pretty sure he's given us permission to share these, and I will see if we haven't been already. I can possibly share his information without me bumbling through it after this meeting if he agrees, because I think it's really invaluable stuff to see this like this, because my previous knowledge on this to date was on LiDAR, which I will go into now. So that's obviously looking at it from an airplane and looking at levels of sandbars. So it's been intriguing for me. But I will move on to the next one, which again will probably have input again, because obviously it's directly affecting the navigation channel, but pole sands. So
brilliant.
Changes in pole sands. It's not the best photo I could find, but it's a photo about that. I've just got a couple of slides, and again would welcome any and all input into it. So most of you have seen these images before. This is the LiDAR over the last 30 years regarding not 30 years, sorry, 20 years regarding Exmouth and pole sands. The blue is essentially gain in sand, so that's where sand has come up, and red is loss. So we've particularly looked at this for the Exmouth beach, and I think would possibly be in agreement that it's correct on the beach, certainly with areas near the RNLI in the central section experiencing a lot of loss, including the sand dunes, which are a deep colour, and gain of blue at Orcombe Point. Here, obviously at pole sands, it's shown to be moving over 20 years. It's grown taller nearer to land and lost height towards further out to sea. Obviously that's over 20 years. I've got another image which again I've shared before, and this is the last 2 years. So again, much shorter time scale, but just to look at the changes. And I think obviously the Orcombe Point end of the beach is more clear than ever, that's a really deep blue, and I think we'd all agree that's where a lot of the sand has ended up. But regarding pole sands itself, I think more of a mixed bag. Obviously there's some indication that the blue areas that it is heading easterly, and potentially northerly as well. So those are the end of my 2 slides. So I would like to hear if anyone else has any further information, any information, points, views, anything on pole sands.
Thanks very much, Tom. Let's open this up to members and guests who may have comments on this issue. Please raise your electronic hand, and by the way, welcome to Councillor Jeff Young, who is the responsible portfolio holder. He was double booked today, but he's just arrived in the meeting, which is fantastic. Anybody would like to speak on this specific issue? Here, Pauline Stock, Councillor Stock.
Well, when they took the sand from Dawlish Warren, they took it from the they took it from the other side, which made it really steep, and so I presume over time that it's got, if you take something sort of vertical and you take away from it, then the sand is gradually going to spread out, isn't it, further? Because in the things that we saw of what Dawlish were doing, they were sort of taking it from the other side of the beach. I just wonder if that's why you're losing some more of the sand. Just a thought.
Thanks, Pauline. Tom, do you have any thoughts on that at all?
No, other than I'm sure that's something we'll tap into through probably existing studies of where the sand was taken and moved from, and yeah, like you say, if you dig a hole, sand's going to fall into it. So yes, and it's going to move about. So I think just one to note and investigate further.
I think that actually moves us quite neatly on. If there's nobody else, to changes in Dawlish Warren, which is our third issue, C.
Okay, so again, I appreciate we talked a lot about Dawlish Warren earlier. But if there's any further points we wanted to pick up, any observations, so Dawlish Warren's been fairly well photographed over the years in its entirety compared to Exmouth Beach and the navigation channel and other bits. So again, I mean, I like a lot of these photos because they definitely tell a story because they move. So Dawlish Warren has changed somewhat. So I'm not 100% sure when this photo is from, but I believe it to be pretty old and before possibly the huts were put on there, or it might be post the huts because there used to be some holiday village on Dawlish Warren where I've seen a photo, but I can no longer find it. So I'm dead keen to find it. But obviously this is quite a different shape to what we have now. Regarding reference photos, and again I've shown these before, but I think they're really useful to show how dynamic and how much everything has changed in the last 20 years. So I've tried to locate the same image as we go through, and I've put obviously the dates on them, so I'm going to flick through them slowly and commentate, and hopefully it will work. So as you can see, it's Dawlish Warren has been edging towards Exmouth, getting closer as sand has moved along, and then the sand that's been there long enough starts to establish with grasses, and I think that's the next slide. There we go. Yep, and that becomes a bit more stable. So we keep going. It's getting just about as far as it wants to get, and then we lose it all again, but still in a quite a pointy shape. We haven't lost it all. It's still very close to Exmouth. So again, compared to the 1999 image, I believe, it is significantly closer. But it was more just to illustrate there has been massive changes and probably will continue to be big changes on Dawlish Warren. So again, that's the end of what I have to say, and would welcome any input information from the group, please.
Thanks, Tom. That those images are fascinating, and well done for putting those together in the way. It was really interesting to watch there. Can I bring in first John Golding? Had his hand up first. John.
Thank you, Chair. Tom, is it too early to see any evidence from the Plymouth Coastal Observatory post-storm surveys? I had a look today and I couldn't find what I was looking for, but the recent 3 storms that we had, is that showing us anything yet, or we've got to be a bit more patient?
No, I contacted them earlier today. Sorry, I meant to get back and say earlier in time. They haven't carried out any post-storm surveys as of yet. They carry out a regular survey, and then if we want to, we can increase the post-storm. Compared to other parts of the country, Storm Eunice was fairly kind to us in terms of damage, and there was some beach movement, no doubt, but it was more traditional beach movement. It was a traditional storm, as you will. It wasn't an easterly. Having been to the beaches, they have changed, but there's not been dramatic changes. So I've not felt the need to instigate surveys at this time. But if it's something we want, we can do. We're still in storm season, so we might get another storm. But this year we've not had any prolonged easterlies or anything which has really changed the beaches beyond their normal look. And in fact, I would argue that the beach nearest the RNLI, I use the pipe, the outfall channel as kind of a barometer of the sand level there, and it has been higher. Certainly, compared to last winter, it's been that pipe has been less exposed, less of a time compared to last winter. So I think the beaches are healthier than last year, but given the relatively good winter we've had, and traditional storms when we've had them have been all sort of southwesterly driven. So.
Thank you, Tom. John, did you want to come back at all, or was that okay? Councillor Faithful, Peter, you have your hand up. Welcome to the meeting, and looking forward to hearing you speak.
Thank you, Chair. I looked around in some older photographs from about 2008 when the marram grass was washed out, and I believe the council would, or somebody attempted to replant marram grass at the time. We thought of having another go at replanting marram grass, possibly putting something to protect the sand, the grass when it's planted.
Sorry, for clarity, are you talking at Dawlish Warren, or are you talking about the former Exmouth sand dune?
Exmouth side. Exmouth.
Okay. We'll be getting on to that section of the beach later, and I guess that could possibly be discussed more at length then, just because it fits neatly to a photo I have of them. So I'll bring that up again, and it's probably a good discussion to have because yeah.
So okay, and that I will keep on this topic for now then, and on Dawlish Warren, Councillor Young. Jeff, welcome to the meeting.
Sorry, my mouse didn't work. There was an article in Devon Live that I saw, I think last night, about the disappearing sand dunes on Exmouth Beach. There's some interesting photographs, interesting comments. It would be lovely to have them return, but as a sea defence, I don't think they have any benefit. But I think if we were to put something back, we'd have to put some solid structure there first for the sand to start to collect around it. I was involved in some works at Bantham some years ago, and they had to put in hard engineering first for the sand to then build up. Just wonder if you can comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for the question, Jeff, and I guess Tom will cover that as we get to the next couple of items. Or
yes, if it's okay, can I park all sand dune questions on when we talk about the central section of the beach, just so when we make notes, it's not jumping around so much. And also, I think there might be some question on Dawlish still.
Councillor Ragg, is your question on Dawlish? If so, we'll
take
it.
No, it's not. It was just following on from the comment about putting up some structure for the sand to be retained, or the marram grass. One year, I remember on Exmouth Beach, people were being encouraged to dump their old Christmas trees down there. See, Pauline nodded her head, so she remembers that. Must be nearly as old as me, Pauline.
We seem to have drifted into this discussion on the sand dunes. So, Tom, why don't we go straight to that? Because obviously, it's what we're debating now. So we're gonna have to. It makes sense. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. I mean, I'm jumping to the central section of the beach now, and I'll go back to the western section, and I'll do the eastern section. This is the photo of the sand dunes, I believe. I remember them as well. Again, I wasn't going to. I mean, they are an important change that has been witnessed on Exmouth Beach, and I understand, and I'm very happy to be corrected if I'm wrong. The history is that there were sand dunes, and then in the 50s, Queen's Drive Road was built, all the entirety length, and that separated the Mare from the beach. The Mare's sand dunes stabilised because they were protected from the sea, by the road, etc. Whereas the sand dunes on the beach disappeared. I understand about in the 70s, if not before, there was a move to bring them back, and this may be the Christmas tree or something, and they established again, but they were actually incredibly had to be well managed. They were one of the contractors we use within the engineering team, their dad used to maintain them. So it was constant moving of netting, constant making sure, they're doing their job. But they also had the issue that occasionally they grew too big and occasionally blew onto the road. So there was a lot of effort to basically cut the back of them off to make sure they didn't go over the highway and block the road. So although that they were arguably, they look natural, they look a wonderful thing to have on a beach, they were a bit of a maintenance hazard, and they could be maintained to be made again, but it's just something we would have to consider, because they're not, especially in the current location. So where they were now, the beach has dropped so low that there was very little beach that gets dry enough to form a sand dune. So even if we were to do the Christmas tree technique, which is a tried and tested technique, I'm not 100% sure it would work on Exmouth Beach, and just because Christmas trees, when they dry out, are quite flammable. Beach fires, it could be, then we'd have to guard the whole area, and there's all sorts of issues, but not impossible. There are new techniques with nettings and various bits, some being trialed in Instow up on the north coast of Devon, to help create sand dunes. I just don't believe where they were currently is possible for them to re-establish, just because the beach isn't big enough, it doesn't dry out enough at high tide to do it. So but other locations, potentially it could be a chance to grow some sand dunes, which may keep beach material which could be redistributed through recycling on the beach. Yeah. And any questions on the central section and sand dunes?
Councillor Pauline Stott has her hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing that could happen there is that the beach be recharged, because the beach is so low now that the actual tide, even doesn't have to be high tide really, comes up to the wall all the way around. And so there, for the summer, I don't know what's going to happen, because as the tide comes up now, there's no dry area for people to sit, because if they go down there at low tide, by the time they've sat down there a couple of hours and the tides come in, they'll be washed away. So the only thing I think that could happen there is that the beach be recharged from some of the sand that is up at Auckland Point, because you've got plenty up there. And in future, if we're not careful at Auckland Point end, the sand's going to blow over the road exactly the same as what it did with the sand dunes, because it's getting very near the top of the wall now.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Good point, Pauline. And I definitely think this idea of the sand dune it inspires such a lot of public support. We could really benefit from some further investigation in terms of that and potential locations. And I'd really like to, and this might be a bit of a curveball, Tom, from my point of view, but I'd really like to know whether, I don't know anybody in the 1970s that might be in this call who are around in Exmouth. I certainly don't want to presume, but whether they have any sort of historical knowledge of how, how those sand dunes were put in place then, or, reinstated, where they were at the time. It'd be really good to have that complete story, really. Obviously, we'd probably want to use different techniques now, but it is an issue, I have to say, I've been contacted about in my role as the new chair by residents. People would like to see it, and it'd be interesting to see what investigations come back, because from what I know, there's mixed views about whether they do give you that sort of real flood defence. Councillor Ollie Davey has got his hand up. Ollie.
Thanks, Chair. I don't pretend to be an expert on this at all, but I do remember the dunes, and I arrived in Exmouth in 1983. At the time, I think the grass had fairly recently been planted on them, and there were signs asking people to stay away from them. I think you can see some of the fencing there, and you can probably also see people sitting inside the fencing. So, you know, they were partly eroded by people simply using them to run over and play on and jump off and so on. And you know, a lot of these things arrive and disappear through natural processes, and you know, cute though they are, I think to try and reinstate them because they looked pretty is probably a mistake. You can't reverse natural processes like that, and I think you could spend a lot of money on that and you know, find it's been washed away in the next tide. And as Pauline said, the tide these days comes up to the wall anyway. And I think we're seeing how the sand can move. We're seeing greater and fiercer storms, higher winds. I think the whole lot could be blown away in no time at all.
Thanks, Ollie. I agree, and it could potentially be a distraction for this. It's only my personal view, which is subject to change. It could be a distraction for us on this beach management steering group to focus too much on it. And you know, it's interesting, you know, what you say. I mean, I used to really enjoy playing on them. It's probably my fault, along with others, that they've gone. But it does inspire. You know, there's a lot of nostalgia, and that's no bad thing at all. But I do agree with you, Ollie. Let's bring in Councillor Chapman, Maddie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I remember on the sand dunes when the grasses were put back and netting was put on. It was children playing on it, and the grasses didn't stand a chance. And when the grasses came out and the wind came up, of course, it blew onto the road. So yes, the EDDC did try and maintain them, but I think the cost and the fact that they couldn't be protected till the grasses grew was a bit of a problem. I would like to ask, bearing in mind that the sea is coming up now and the beach is very, very wet there, what the foundations of the wall were like. I don't know if anyone's had a look at that, or how deep the foundations are, bearing in mind we're losing a lot of sand there. I don't know how deep the foundations go, but that might be a good idea to check they're all right and the wall doesn't collapse.
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. I know you've raised this in the last meeting, and I just wondered whether either Tom or John, one of our officers, might have any insight on that issue. No worries if not. I just thought I'd check now before moving on to our other speakers.
I believe they did some trial pits for the depths for the 2015 study. So yeah. I will dig them out and try and share them with the group, just the highlighted section, because the BMP is quite a big document to navigate around.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be really helpful. Eileen, I'll come to you.
Yeah, Tom's just said it. There was a study taken down near the old RNLI station, down near Harbour View.
Thanks for that, Eileen. That's really helpful to know. Councillor Young, Jeff.
Yeah, we really need to know what we want in the future. If we there's a lot of problems with sand dunes, as Tom was saying, in maintenance and sand blowing across the road, etc., etc. In my day, it used to be known as rhubarbing, when you jumped off the sand hill and shouted rhubarb as you rolled down the hill. So just thought I'd add that.
Thank you. I can't wait for that to be included in our eventual beach management plan, Jeff. But I think we've had a good discussion on the issue. Eileen, do you want to come back quickly?
Yeah, just quickly. Why is sand being taken when it blows on the road and put out Orcombe Point? Because that is altering the nature of the landscape at Orcombe Point as well, and the flows. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Eileen. Tom, do we want to discuss that on your? Because I think that's an issue we do have to discuss.
Yeah.
Because
yes.
It comes up. Shall we wait? Would you like to then move on and present the eastern section.
Yeah,
first?
yeah, we've gone slightly out of order.
Yeah,
would it be okay
it's
before?
one of those things. Yeah.
Would it be okay to park that? I mean, that's a nice small item. It's important, but small item that we can park and talk about when we go to the eastern section, because I think it's. I had a little bit more to say regarding beach recharge or recycling at this bit before we move on. So
brilliant. Over to you, Tom, then.
Yeah, it was mentioned. Obviously, I've said the beach is too low. It's too wet. Too much of a time for sand dunes to form, even if they were encouraged. And I think it was mentioned that we could and should recharge, but most likely recycle. So essentially, recharging, if you see it written down, that means it being bought in from somewhere else. So dredged off the seabed or licensed supply site and brought to the beach. Sorry, excuse me. If a recycling is moving around, recycling is much easier to do and can often be done on existing licenses with MMO and various bits and pieces, as long as we're not going too crazy and creating, it needs to be relatively natural. So yes, by all means, an option is to move sand down from Orcombe Point to this area where it's been lost. Obviously, the concern is that we burn a lot of diesel doing that, and the next tide it all ends up back at Orcombe Point, or worse, it ends up out at sea or in the navigation channel. So it's making sure that if that is something we want to do, and I've got a feeling it will be part of something we do, is moving sand around on the beach to where we need it. It's just making sure it stays there. So whether or not it's up through a groin structure or another structure on the beach, it's something to be considered. But it's also, we need to balance, make sure we're not thinking too grand for the affordable solution. And again, there is cost, but not huge amounts of cost on moving sand from one location to another on the same beach. Cool. So if it's okay, I'll move back to the western section.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to the eastern section, and I'll bring up the point regarding the beach on the road on Orcombe Point. So I'm losing speech in a moment. So changes in the beach at the western section. So this is kind of deemed from Smeaton's Wall all the way around to I guess the slipway adjacent to the NCI. So again, would welcome any thoughts on changes that people have seen. I do have some personal knowledges here that we until recently, and they're very much more well covered now. At the slipway, is it Carter Hill or I forget the road name. Opposite
Carlton Hill.
Carlton Hill. Yes, there's a slipway at the bottom that goes onto the beach. Devon County Council have their big attenuation tanks buried in the beach. And for a period of time, we were losing a lot of beach there, and this was exposed in the winter months and an eyesore because it was lots of rock and fabric. We worked with Devon County Council to tidy it up, and nature's been kind to us since. It has actually provided a good cover of sand over the top. So I don't believe they've been exposed this year, and normally they are. So my recent experience is that actually this area of the beach is looking quite healthy. At least in the middle section, but again, would welcome any personal knowledge or views or information.
Thanks very much, Tom. Anybody, Eileen, perhaps with some knowledge, with some background knowledge? No problem. If not, we can move on.
No, I don't think so.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Keep
So
going.
Skipping back to the eastern section. So again, I've purposely chosen older photos to create a bit of a debate, because I think the beach is much higher now than when this was taken. I'll start with the point raised regarding the sand blowing onto the road and being put at Orcombe Point end. That is true. That's what happens. But I understand the quantities aren't actually that huge. I understand it's only a couple of a couple of of the vehicle that picks it up, load at a time. And the reason is because the access is significantly better at Orkham Point for that vehicle to go up onto the beach and tip onto the beach. So the quantities aren't there, but I appreciate it would be much served if it could be left at if it could be put where it's needed. So perhaps as part of the beach management plan, we could look at improving the slipway adjacent to the RNLI slipway, that not the RNLI slipway, but the one on the beach wall, to allow vehicles or whatever is doing the work to distribute sand there. There are concerns as well with is it contaminated once it's been on the road? So it's not always, if it is contaminated, it has to go away at great expense. So there is a desire to keep sand off the road at all times, but occasionally, as we know, even in the summer when it can blow on, and if it is sufficient quality, it can go back on the beach. More changes at Orkham Point end. Obviously the beach is rather big there and rather healthy, and I understand it's, I mean, although most people enjoy it from a leisure perspective, I think it's created some operational difficulties that it's difficult to get any light watercraft from the road out to launch because it's so far. I again would welcome any views on that. Again, I don't know, but my experience, my view on why the beach is so healthy is in part the groins. So way back, there's drawings and there's photos of this being a barren beach with lots of rocks, and the groins were brought in. And I think for many years they did a fine job in terms of bringing the beach up to an average level. However, that they've gone into overdrive recently, with most of the groins are buried, I think, and maybe not at the moment. I've not actually been that end of the beach since the storm, but certainly at the end of last summer they were causing difficulty for us. We're maintaining them, and yet we have to spend half a morning digging down to get to the bottom of them. So the beaches are more than healthy at this end. And I think that's in part due to the groins, but also I think due to the combination of events we've had and Orkham Point acting as a headland, but acting as a harbour for harbour in navigation terms, harbouring sand that essentially on longshore drift on the predominantly southwesterly wave and wind directions we get, sand gets pushed into that corner because it can't. It can go around, but not in the quantities. It can't go around Orkham Point. It acts as a big natural groin. And then in the easterlies as well, unless they come in at a certain angle, that side of the beach is protected from easterlies because it juts out like a headland. So over time, with a combination of the groins, I believe it's led to quite a big depositing of sand. It may also be related to the changes in the navigation channel, as obviously a channel can move sediment much quicker and take it with it, but when it loses energy, that wants to drop. So potentially with changes in channel, once the sand's sort of suspended in the channel loses energy, it's drifting to new places, potentially Orkham Point. So yeah, there's two hands up, so I think I've spoken enough. So
no, thanks, Tom. That was really good, really well explained. Yeah, two speakers. I'll start with Councillor Pauline Stott. Pauline.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember it well. Way back in the 60s, early 60s, it all went to rock. We had a big storm and there was just rock there. So, and the groins that were there, well, there wasn't nothing much left of them. And so they rebuilt all the groins. Since then, the sand has gradually been coming back. So for the Environment Agency to say the sand groins don't work, there's proof of it. They're all covered now. I don't think there's any, hardly. I think they're all right under the ground. You can just see the what do you call? I don't know what you call the things that come up at the end of them, but you can see some of them, but not all of them. So it definitely does work. Only thing is, there's too much up there now. That's the trouble. It's halfway up the rock, you know, up at the cliff. You used to be able to see the bottom of the cliff. Now it's sort of gone up so much, and the wall, well, you couldn't jump off the wall. You can jump off the wall now and land on the sand quite easy. Yeah. So definitely the groins do work.
Thanks, Pauline. That's really, really helpful. I agree with that. Eileen.
Yeah, again, like Pauline, years ago, it was just shingle there. And in fact, the sea used to come up over the wall, times of high tide, and anglers would be out there fishing. I've seen many a conger eel landing on the pavement out there. The other thing I wanted to say, I might have missed something, but sand is not just being taken from the road at Walkham Point, it's being taken from much further along the seafront and put onto Walkham Point. That's the point I was trying to make. So sorry if I didn't make that clear.
Thanks, Eileen. And I think that
just to clarify, yes, all sand taken from the whole stretch of the road is taken to Walkham Point, and that's due to the access being better. So I think, as part of the BMP, I think it's something we would need to look at is improving access on other bits of the beach, especially if we're going to investigate any recycling of moving material from it. So,
okay, brilliant. Okay, thanks, Tom. Councillor Young, Jeff.
Yeah, something that Tom just said about the navigation channel. When I had my boat, the channel followed the beach pretty well all the way up to Walkham Point and then headed out to sea. And now it turns pretty well in front of the lifeboat station. So there is less energy in that channel along that section of beach. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So any further contributions that anybody in this meeting today haven't been able to make today, or physical evidence you may have, such as dates, photographs of the area, can be emailed to Tom or Debbie or myself. And I'd just like to add a personal sort of comment on that. I am minded, and I'll just sort of get Eileen and Pauline's view on this, because I know both of you have lived in and represented Exmouth for a very long time. Whether it might be a good idea to reach out to the Exmouth Museum and to the Exmouth Past and Present Facebook page to see whether we can maybe get some more, find some more photographs to inform this project. I just wanted to get your views on that, if you have any, obviously, but it's just an idea.
One place you could try is the Exmouth Library.
Brilliant
the
idea.
Reference Library. They might have some. Mr. Sleeman, he used to do lots of books on Exmouth, on Old Exmouth. Perhaps there's some in there of the seafront. I don't know what Eileen thinks. Do you think that's a good idea, Eileen?
Yeah, I do. And also Joe Gorfin.
Oh, yeah.
You remember Joe Gorfin? He used to be, I think he used to own the Exmouth Journal. Yeah, the Gorfin print work. But I think also we've got to factor in climate change and how that's affecting beach levels now as well, and the channels and all the rest of it. There are, quite a few things to consider, I think. But certainly, I think looking at the changes that have taken place over the years and maybe measuring that against the weather conditions for those years could be useful. It would be a sizable piece of work, I would think.
Yeah, I totally agree, Eileen. That's why I wanted to ask you both, because we don't want to delay this, but it might just be worth reaching out and just seeing whether we could get some more, because clearly, clearly all of these photographs and further local knowledge. I mean, I'll certainly be reaching out to my old geography teacher who taught me on this, but much of which I've actually forgotten because it was so many years ago. and I did only get a B in geography GCSE, but I just thought it might be worth us, on the steering group, just trying to see whether we can add anything else to what we've already discussed tonight.
Yeah, and I think that having people like Graham here is so valuable, because they can see the daily changes, and as I said before, that I don't believe there's any substitute for local knowledge, and Pauline will remember old Jim Shapter. He had enormous knowledge, from being a boy here. He used to cycle down here from London. And that's before we had motorways. So it was, it's consulting with the local groups. The Beach Rescue Club, they've got, and they're down there every day of the year. The lifeboat institution, they're there all the time. It's the people who are on the ground, but then to research the historical changes, I think would be invaluable.
It's just more materials, because obviously I've got this request for photographs. I just thought that might be something we could do, but let's see. I'll certainly make an effort. But thanks, Eileen, for what you said there. You have much greater local knowledge than I. You've lived in Exmouth for much longer than I have.
Yeah, but I'm older than everyone else.
And on that note, I'd like to say a huge thank you for everyone's contribution today. And agenda item 7 is for Tom, our project manager on this project, to advise of the possible next date for the next meeting.
Yes, and I'll probably get rid of the slide so we can see everyone's faces a bit better.
Oh, hooray.
Oh no, that's not it. There we go. Stop share. There we go. Hello. Yes, so I found that really useful, and we would now we have BCP appointed, they will be more interested and more, being wanting to find more information. So I'm pretty sure they're going to make quite a few inquiries based off what we've just heard. So the meeting, we don't want to have a meeting for the sake of it and too soon, but we need to have it when there's a good piece of work to review. In my mind, there's 2 things coming up which I'd like the group to review and come back with. They're firstly the Xs3 Partnership wider document, and we can hopefully invite Steph Harper-Young along to give us more insight into that, because I think it is important in the bigger scheme of things to involve, to at least be aware and feed into the Xs3 Partnership. And obviously the other thing is actually our finalised scope. So we might need a bit of tweaking, but hopefully and this is more of a contractual scope. So this isn't the ideas. This is what we're giving to a consultant to deliver. So I'd like to think that would be with us possibly by the end of April. So I would be suggesting another meeting around May time, which would also hopefully, I believe that the Xs3 Partnership is also due for public publication towards the end of April. So a May date would be my preference, if that's supported by the group.
Yep. And I think we've discussed, Tom, we may wish to hold that in person in Exmouth. We may. I'm not going to prejudge that, but physical meetings are not for everything, but we might want to hold one physically in May.
Yes, it'd be good for the group to meet each other in person at least once, and also give an opportunity to see some of the issues firsthand rather than talking about it from our homes. So
yeah, we could take our buckets and spades.
Well, we could hold it.
A bit of sun movement.
I was thinking ocean with the great view, but Eileen, we're open to suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks everybody who've remained, and thanks for everybody for remaining this long. That brings our meeting to an end. I'd like to thank everyone, including any members of the public watching online, for taking part. However, can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live, and until then your comments will be live to the public. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.